Welcome to American Black Journal. I'm Stephen Henderson. My first guest today is the true definition of a reformed man. He's a former gang member who went to prison for killing a drug dealer at the age of 16. But after his release, he made the decision to transform his life. He's now a Wayne State University graduate, the founder of a nonprofit organization that assists returning citizens, and the author of a new book titled Reformed, Memoir of a Juvenile Killer. The book tells how Mario Bueno turned his life around after a childhood filled with drug abuse, violence, and a 19-year prison sentence. I want to welcome Mario Bueno to American Black Journal. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm humbled.
Yeah. So, as I said, no question, but there's something about your story and the detail in your story that just makes it hard to believe that it actually happened. I mean, there are lots of stories of redemption and second chances in America. Yours is really extraordinary. Talk about sort of that transformation and I guess what it was that made it possible.
You know, it's I often sit and think, and I wonder. I'm taken aback by all the blessings that's poured in since the transformation. Mm-hmm. Leading up to the transformation was a lot of hardship. Mm-hmm. It entailed, obviously, at 16, entering an adult prison system. One is going to experience internal challenges, let alone external.
Yes.
Right? Imagine being the new 16-year-old in a high school.
Right. Right.
Now the new 16-year-old in adult prison. Right. Right. So it was that adolescent who experienced a lot of internal challenges, experienced a lot of growth through growing pains. Yeah. I experienced 3 years in solitary before the age of 22. Wow. Kicked out of 9 prisons, 16 total prisons in 19 years, and at one point deemed incorrigible. Yeah. For the most part, men going into the prison industrial complex, for the lack of a better term, mm-hmm. are broken. Yes. Right? Right. Let alone an adolescent. So that brokenness is somewhat set aside because of more pressing issues, right? So going through that, it took a lot of self-discovery through pain. Yeah. The solitary helped, but it was the nurturing. It was the nurturing from parents that really found redemption through this path, this unchosen path of parenting, so to speak. Right. So I was an exception to the rule. I was a 16-year-old who, at the depths of his belief systems, thought it was okay to rob and hurt drug dealers. Yeah. And at the height of my prison sentence, I was actually towards the end teaching 3 classes of 17 to 25 high-risk prisoners, the tenets of conflict resolution, right. which are critical thinking, effective communication, ethical reason, ethical decision-making, leadership, and fundamentally, if they stayed, we would train them to be mediators.
Yeah. You know, we always focus on the act that sends a juvenile to prison and what it was, but that act doesn't just fall out of the sky. It doesn't just happen one day. This was a life that you lived up to that point. Yeah. That day that you take someone else's life, there were a lot of things that happened that pushed you to that point.
Absolutely, Stephen. You know, I like to often refer to the Bible when we talk about how we believe in a belief system that says that God created man in his image and his likeness, but in one day. Mm-hmm. But the 5 previous days he took to create the environment. Right. That's how important the environment is, right? I wasn't born a drug dealer. I wasn't born a killer. And unfortunately, there was a space during my parents' own struggle that allowed for influences such as that to guide me towards, I started selling drugs at 13. By 15, I thought it was okay to harm and rob drug dealers. And by 16, I was harming drug dealers and robbing them. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, like you said, I took a man's life during the commission of that drug deal turned armed robber. And it was that pain that led me to those belief systems. And it was the space, the lack of parenting, the lack of mentorship that we just discussed during the break, how important mentorship is.
Yeah. So take us to that day. The day that it all goes really wrong for you. Your memory of that, I would imagine, has changed over time. How you got there and what you did.
You know, when I was called to address this at the parole board, I found it very challenging as a 30, now going to be 36-year-old man to account for the actions of a 16-year-old angry boy.
Yeah.
Right. So, and in the writing of this memoir, it was therapeutic, and it was reflective for me to be able to look back at that 16-year-old and try to understand. And I remember a 16-year-old who was angry, who thought he had all the answers, who embraced the glamorization of a culture, of a wild, wild west culture. This was during the days of New Jack City, of Menace to Society, of obviously Biggie and Tupac, but it goes deeper than that.
You found yourself attracted.
It goes deeper than that. It goes deeper than that because what happens is you have young adolescent males who. We know the statistics of a fatherless home, you know. So I'm dealing with a father who we stopped communicating around 12, 13 years old, that pivotal time, right? In the rite of passage time
right when you need them the most
for a young male, and who fills the shoes? 18, 19-year-old gang leaders and drug dealers, right? So and you become what you see, right? And you become like the ones you're around the most. And who was around me the most? Unfortunately. These kind of people.
So now you're working with people who are trying to come back from the same place you did. We are having a really interesting conversation in this country right now about youth offenders who are sentenced, to adult prisons, people who have life sentences that they got as young people. Tell us what you're seeing with the folks you're working with that tells you we're headed in the right or the wrong direction. I guess I'm not quite sure anymore. Good question.
Good question. I think understanding the intended purpose of the criminal justice system from the inception, I think that we are headed down the right direction. I think the fact that we're having conversations or even opinions about programs that the Michigan Department of Corrections has, for example, I believe it's called offender success, right? There's actually a division now aimed at offender success. The fact that we can hold an opinion about such a program tells me we're heading in the right direction. So
are we doing enough?
Are we doing enough?
Are we spending enough? There's one of the questions.
Good question. I think that we look heavily at the front side of the criminal justice system, of the punitive part of them going in. I think we really lack vision and understanding of the deprivation that we're doing by ignoring the back end. By ignoring the fact that, first and foremost, what is our purpose for a prison?
Is it punishment or is it rehabilitation? We've had that conversation for 200 years.
Secondly, we need to understand 95% are coming home.
They will not be there for life. And so what will they be like and what will they do?
And thirdly, I think it's in our best interest to really be concerned about that. So I always tell the guys that I mentor and life coach. I just met with a guy yesterday, a parolee out of Macomb, and fundamentally it's not philosophy. It's physics. So the men in prison, what they're doing in there, they'll continue to do out here. And the problem is there isn't a demand for them. There isn't an expectation. There isn't a requirement. There isn't a stimulus in prison making them grow. Being concerned with how they're being shaped or reshaped as in reformed. So right now, Luck Inc. is a service provider. I'm a co-founder. I'm current director of programs. It's LUCK, Leaders Under Correct Knowledge. We've been a service provider for Goodwill Industries of Detroit, Detroit Employment Solutions Corporation. Now we're going to be a service provider for Serve Metro of Detroit. And we focus on workforce development. But mainly, we focus first and foremost on the belief systems of the returning citizen. Fundamentally, what do they believe?
We've got about a minute left.
Absolutely.
I want to ask you, when you see kids in Detroit, in the neighborhood where you were from, 16-year-olds walking around, living that life, what goes through your mind?
Well, we're in action. We're in motion. I try to connect, regardless of where I'm at. What goes through my mind is that the only reason why I do what I do and mentor and reach out to these populations is because if I can just prevent one murder, just one murder, then I've made up. And I live every day without trying to figure out if I've made up yet.
Yeah. I mean, that's got to live with you forever, this idea of how do you make up for what you did?
Doing what I do now.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, it's an incredibly inspiring story.
We got a lot of success stories, too. One client served 49 in the last 50 years. Another one served 42 years from the age of 18. Wow. Another one 28 years from the age of 9. We have a lot of success stories. And what we're doing is we're finding them where they're at, expanding their vision of themselves, and then coaching them where they need to be.
And what you're doing is proof that it can be done, which is what we need to get the will to do it more.
Peer mentoring, right? Yeah. If it's important in government agencies or in post-secondary education, how much more important in the deprivation of prison? Mentors.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.